Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Accuracy in America. I am Don Irvine, once again, joined by my co-host, Brian McNichol.
Hello, deplorables, dregs, despicables, chumps, Neanderthals, and those dog-faced pony soldiers.
That's right. That's who we are. That's a fairly good description of who we are. Yeah, there's a lot of fog out this morning. I'll tell you, I was out there driving, I'm like, couldn't see almost anything at all. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's that time of year. It's starting to fog up, frost on the pumpkin a little bit, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you knew I was down in Evansville, and I'm glad Monday was a holiday. I mean, I decided to stay in Louisville for the night, Sunday night, instead of staying in Evansville. It's about a 2-hour drive. Made a world of difference in our trip leaving on Monday to come home. Little less fatigued, and the track. On a normal day, weekday, the traffic between Evansville and Louisville, particularly as you get close to Louisville, is pretty bad. Right. I think having the holiday and leaving from Louisville gave us a little bit of an advantage, but same type of thing. It's dark, it gets foggy. You hit certain places. We go through mountains and different places, parts of, as we go through Kentucky and West Virginia, and we're like, hey.
Yeah, some scary drives there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm used to that, driving through the Great Smoky Mountains once in a while, but I don't like driving through fog when the daylight hasn't hit.
Right, and it's not just you; it's like everybody else. That's when you get. This is the time of year you get those 300 car wrecks and stuff, right? Where no one sees it till they drive into it.
Right. So, yeah. All right.
You made it back safely.
That's right. I did make it back safely.
It did look like you were having fun spoiling them grandkids.
Yeah, it was. It was a lot of fun. And my wife was supposed to. I was supposed to basically take her to the airport directly on our way to the trip. But since we left a little early, we went home and then, figured that we'd get her to the airport after that. But she's taking Southwest. She checks her schedule. Slight, they push back the flight by a few minutes. She checks her schedule again, and then they say delayed without any update on time. And she's like, oh man. So she switched her flight to yesterday, but I'm supposed to go out to Utah in about 10 days. And I'm like, I just don't know if I'm going to I don't know if I'm going to actually get the flight I booked myself on.
Right. So yeah, there's a big problem. The pilots are, it's Southwest now, but the American pilots say theirs starts today or tomorrow. This is a similar thing. It's not an official job action. It's not a walkout or whatever, but it's a sick out. Basically, they're just saying we're not going to go to work because over these vax mandates.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's just. Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to say, there's just so many things. The one article that's written about Southwest is that they have 7,000 fewer employees than they did 2 years ago. And with the travel up and all of these other things, just all these factors are just like they thought they could restore these schedules, and they can't do it.
They can't do it. They don't have the people, and now your point. You just don't have people to fly the planes at all.
Yeah.
So they're not the only ones, but it's beginning to look like these vax mandates are dying before the regulation ever gets written. Right? People are just saying they can't or won't do it. So. I think that the Biden administration is facing a moment of reckoning on that, because it's not so much that it's when they poll it, they come out and they say, well, it polled popular, but people don't want to do it. They're not, the people who aren't going to do it are not going to do it. And I think that while, I don't know how they ask these questions, but the feeling I get just watching this stuff happen is that, you can probably win on the polling question of should everyone be vaccinated? You probably get 50+1 on that. But when you say, should everyone be forced to be vaccinated, that changes the question, right? And I think that people are saying, okay, it doesn't appear that all the people who don't get vaccinated die. So maybe they, should get a say in what goes in their body.
Yeah, no, this is a tough road here. So when I went to church in Indiana, there is, masks are optional, and I'd look around the congregation, and my grandkids, my son-in-law says, he says, there's just no way I'm going to get the kids to wear them in church. So he's not even going to fuss with that. He's a doctor, so he wears his all the time. He's gotten used to it anyway. So he wears that. My daughter wasn't wearing it, but it was scattered. There was some people were, some people weren't. Some of the older people weren't wearing the masks, and all of that. The thing is that when I got to the second part of that church meeting, the men were together, and this, and I don't know. I know some of them because I've been in that place before. I know some of them just by recognizing them having been there before, but not everybody. People move in, move out. Things change over time, and so this guy, he pulls up a chair beside me, and we actually got into a discussion about, how to deal with people and this whole issue of the vaccine and take it or not take it. And it divides everybody. It divides a lot of people. And this one guy, I mean, he says that, his son-in-law, his son, had to get vaccinated because he's in the Air Force. He says, but I've chosen not to get the Pfizer vaccine at all, and thought through my head, I'm thinking like, okay, I'm vaxxed. That's good. But I wasn't really expecting to sit next to somebody who wasn't I figured most people were vaccinated, but there are going to be some. I mean, it's like, but I think both you and I have been in places where there've been plenty of people who haven't been masked, and we don't really know if they're vaccinated or not, but we're okay. I mean, you've already kind of gone through the whole COVID, thing. I haven't, but so far I'm like, I don't know, it's like, I've been in several situations where I've been with groups of people. Nothing's happened. I think people
Right.
let people make their individual choice.
See, that's what I'm saying is like if people are starting to say, okay, one of the things I saw this week was the percentage of people who believe that if they get COVID, they will get very sick and die. Has fallen from 61% to 36%. So people are saying, okay, if you get it, it seems like most of the people who get it are living through it, right? Or recovering in fairly short order. Kids, obviously, half of them don't even know that they ever had it, right? Because it's asymptomatic. At least half the cases in the country are asymptomatic. So, people don't even know they have it. It's not such a bad deal, right? And then you have the immunity. I mean, you've got the good part without having to have gone through the bad part. And that's where a lot of people are on this. So I think the idea that it needed to be shoved down people's throats. I also think that, like for instance, in Virginia they're polling about the governor's race, right? The Washington Post polled in like the middle of September. They said, do you favor the vax mandate and the mask mandates, and what about schools and teachers and so forth? And the polling was right at 70% of the people favored mask mandates for teachers, for anybody who works in a school. I mean, vax mandates and vaccine mandates for teachers, anybody who works in a school, and about 67%, just below it, favored them for students. Okay, but in the last week or two, there's been a poll out that asked the question of whose COVID policies do you approve of the most, right? Who do you think would do the best job of handling COVID, Youngkin or McAuliffe? Now, Youngkin's thing is, he says he's had the vax and he recommends people get it, but doesn't think they should be forced to get it. And McAuliffe is, he has famously said, he's for making it as hard on Virginians as possible to force them to get the vax, right? He's a very much government, heavy hand of government making you do this type of guy. And, even though 70% or almost 70% are saying get vaxxed, McAuliffe's only ahead on that measure by like 50 to 48. So, voters are rethinking where they are on COVID policy. There's still the fear of COVID and so forth, but how the government's relating to us over it has gotten people concerned. The civil liberties forfeited, has gotten people concerned. The worm is kind of turning on that.
Yeah, look, I mean, you make your choice and you live with the consequences. I mean, it's unfortunate for those that have died, particularly those that have been unvaxxed, but they made a choice, and we just I was just I texted a friend of mine because his I guess it's his cousin, or can't remember exactly what the relationship is, but I know this other guy, and he had posted on Facebook that his father had passed away, and he kind of made some allusion to COVID, but I wanted to confirm that with my friend who was part of the family, and he said, "Oh yeah, it was the big C," and I said, "Well, was he vaxxed or not?" And he says, "No." He says, "Matter of fact, except for this guy, the son's kids who are on LDS missions right now." He says, "I don't think anybody in the family is vaxxed." Now, this is in Idaho, which is famously known for not being, not having a high vaccination rate.
Right.
And he was older. I mean, he's older than I am. So, I mean, he was right in that sweet spot for potential, depending upon what was going on out there. And, he made that choice. And I haven't seen it. I didn't hear anything back through my friend from the family that they regretted anything. I mean, they felt that their decisions they made, they live with that, and that's the way it is. And like the guy was sitting next to in church, he was like, "Look, this is all in God's hands, as far as I'm concerned, and that's how He's going to live His life." And you make that choice and whatever. But yeah, this heavy hand of government stuff, that's a big turnoff. I mean, the Virginia race continues to be a very interesting race. The desperation of the McAuliffe and the Democrats. I mean, you're getting people on national television, other Democrats, fretting about this race.
Yeah, there's a lot of concern that they're not really working it very hard. That they sort of think they have it in the bank, and they don't really have the pedal to the metal. The Republicans do. I mean, they haven't won a statewide election since 2009 for any office. So, they're fired up and ready to go, and it's very, very close. Early voting. There's been about 300,000, 400,000 votes, which the universe is. In 2020, there were 4.3 million votes cast in Virginia in the presidential election. So you already have 400,000 early voters, and it's probably not going back all the way to 400,000 and 4.3 million in a non-presidential year. That's a fair amount of votes, but it's also, most of them are from the congressional districts in Northern Virginia. So, Northern Virginia is shooting its wad right now. They're saying, here's all our votes into the pile. So it will be the rest of Virginia that knows the number to beat when the flag goes up. So it's interesting. It's very close, and I think it's inside of where very many people are comfortable saying predicting the outcome.
Yeah, what I thought was interesting is that of all, I get mailings out of Virginia, but the only one I'm getting out of there, and I don't even know why I'm getting this particular fundraising plea, is from the guy who's running for Attorney General. I've had a couple.
Yeah,
I've had a couple of solicitations. I'm like, what list am I on?
Right, Herring is another one. His race is closed from almost 20 points down to I think 1 point. So.
Wow.
I mean, that's a huge collapse. I mean, he's had it 2 terms, and he had a blackface scandal of his own, but it's Attorney General. It's a little bit quieter thing, and he's been a model progressive. I mean, he's been the very kind of guy we want to be. The candidate against him had not performed that well, but all of a sudden, the race is on. He's in trouble.
Yeah, I mean, do you see that as being something of kind of the down ballot type of thing too? I mean, Youngkin is staying tough with it, and so other people, I mean, on the polling level, other people are looking a little more favorably towards the Republicans in general.
Yeah, and so it's like Dana Bass said the other day. She said it's like I got 2 cups in front of me because I'm drinking every time you say Donald Trump. She said this to McAuliffe, right? And he's laughing, and it's like, that's all he's talking about with regard to Youngkin is, hey, he's a Trump acolyte. Okay, well, that's not very, that's losing its effectiveness. And what is gaining its effectiveness is tying McAuliffe to Biden, right? So, the first thing McAuliffe did when he when he emerged as the Democrat nominee, was, embraced Biden. Biden at that time was popular in Virginia. He just won the election. He had all these great plans of things he wanted to do. Well, now, Biden is, about 12 points underwater in Virginia, and it's getting worse. It's high energy prices, high grocery prices, and all this. And these are two guys. I mean, you're trying to paint Youngkin as some wild-eyed, hit who's, going to do crazy things or whatever. But I mean, to the rest of Virginia, there's two fat cats from McLean fighting it out, right? I mean, they can't tell the difference. One doesn't look significantly less couth than the other, right? They look like it's the same deal. It's just politics. So, and Biden, even McAuliffe has said, he said on a Zoom call the other day, he had all these supporters, right? And it's Zoom. So, it's going to get recorded and pushed out, that, Biden is a drag on his ticket. So, and he definitely, he's having Jill, and I guess Kamala is coming in and so forth, but not Joe, right? Because Joe is not popular, in the Commonwealth right now.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's the thing is that, as you mentioned, these higher prices, I mean, there is only so much period of time here where you can say it's still the pandemic and these other things were mitigating factors. There are policies, there are things that the Biden administration has done that are resulted in these issues today, and this affects everybody, right? I mean,
and more importantly, the things they want to do, right? The two big bills, the Build Back Better and the straight infrastructure bill, right? They want to spend about $6 trillion more dollars, and the inflation is the very thing that will be hurt the worst by that, right? That'll be a highly inflationary climate, if you push $6 trillion more dollars into the pile, right? So that we don't really have, right? That everybody already realizes that, debt is like 125% of GDP at this point. So, we're in uncharted waters on that. The thing, the worse the prices get, the inflation and so forth gets, the harder it is for Biden to get people to pass those bills.
Right. Yeah. And as you're saying about McAuliffe and Biden, I mean, where Biden is hurting him, it's still remarkable. I mean, I will talk about this over and over again until I see something different. But here we go. Just under 9 months in his presidency, it's remarkable to me that a president, can be an albatross to his own party at this point in time. You can't. Here you are running for governor in a very, in an important state, and you can't bring in the president because he's killing you. He's absolutely killing you. Nobody wants to see him out there and do things. I mean, that he's a negative force on you. This is just bad news all the way around. And I think McAuliffe, I mean, I saw there was an email where he was criticizing the critics of CRT, right?
Right.
I mean, he's trying to dig himself out of a hole on the CRT issue, but only with hardcore progressive Democrats do I see that message even remotely resonating. Because who are criticizing, CRT? It's the parents. It's the everyday.
Right. I mean, you're aligning yourself with one union against the whole rest of the state, right? Now, not everybody's outraged against, about CRT, right? And some people know what it is, not convinced it's a big problem, whatever. But the people who are concerned, it's about an 80%, 90% issue, right? That people are, the people who are watching this are outraged by it, and the idea that it's not really happening, and you shouldn't have any say in what happens. I think that was a terrible thing. He's very glib. Terry is. He just splits these things out, right? I think he got ahead of himself there when he said, parents shouldn't be part of designing curriculum. I mean, but you can't sell that line. You can't talk that line down, right? That's parents absolutely should be part of curriculum.
Yeah, no, absolutely. All right, let's move on to this debt ceiling issue. So after the House passed the extension for now, it goes until December. So we'll we kicked the can down the road. But there was a lot of blowback for some of the Republicans on the Senate side who had voted to go ahead and kick this can down the road a little bit. But I mean, what's your take? I mean, because we talked last week that Republicans, they should hold firm. They really had nothing to lose. I mean, the Democrats already had reconciliation for which to go through, but they didn't want to use reconciliation. They get it to December. I mean, that's just they're. What's going to happen here, in your opinion?
Well, if anyone who thinks that Mitch McConnell got rolled into doing this has not been following what goes on in the Senate in the last 20 years, right? He didn't get rolled. Now the Democrats have to deal with this again in December when they're trying to finalize some kind of budget process for this. It's still hanging over their heads. Raising the debt ceiling it will be mashed against, let's spend profligately, right? Let's throw a whole bunch more money into the economy, right? And we're so far in debt that we have to raise the debt ceiling to do it. Right. So now you have sandwiched that process down to it all gets voted on at the same time in December with the clock ticking against you to try to get it done before the end of the year. Right. To when the tax extenders and all that kind of stuff runs out. So, he's now compressed their schedule, assured that they will debate nothing but this. And, those votes are not going to be any easier to come by in December than they are now. Right. So, Mitch has just made this a continuing problem for them, and they really can't focus on anything else, and they really can't, move forward. I think, they're going to have to go back and look at what Manchin was saying about, wait until next year to resolve a lot of this because, they really can't move forward on it. Now, the thing that Republicans are banking on is that, when you get X close to an election, Democrats will stop trying to pass this stuff. I don't think that's true. I believe they think they win. You got to remember, Congress considers the victory, when the bill is passed, right? Whether the programs it authorizes work and actually solve the problem, that's someone else's concern, right? Their concern is, hey, we passed the bill, we gave the money, right? So I think that they will stay in trouble over this. And I think cave is about the farthest word I would use for it. And I was glad to see their rabble rousers, their Sheldon Whitehouses and Tammy Baldwin's, shrieking that he had folded because, that Mitch is sitting there saying, yeah, I folded. We'll see. Right.
Yeah. I mean, I think the Republicans, they still have the upper hand in this. The Democrats are still struggling.
Absolutely. They control all the levers. And now they've dropped this big bomb of a problem into your December. Right.
Yeah, and for now at least it takes some of the criticism from the liberals away at this point. It's like, Republicans were holding this up. We're going to have all these dire predictions by
right.
Biden.
You can't sit there and slag them in the press, and you can't. It was being used as a wedge to force Manchin, Sinema, whoever to vote to end the filibuster. Right. So now the filibuster kind of can't really argue that that's all that necessary just to get a spending bill across the finish line, right? So, it's like the crisis of the debt being, debt limit being exceeded, has passed. And so you can't, and Republicans made that happen. They get all the credit for averting the crisis, and they really haven't given in on the main points.
Yeah, no, and with Manchin, as he had said, I mean, he postponed this thing. Let's, we don't need this. I mean, he wants to get past the 2022, the midterms, and this, as you said, this kind of compresses the schedule. I mean, the Democrats are going to, they're going to fight tooth and nail, particularly those in the House, and the group in that hardcore group in the Senate. But they are, like I said, they're no better off. And now you've just moved this thing, down, for another 2 months. You now pushed this 2 months further into this election season, and more pressure on the Democrats to say, "Oh man, what are we? What's going on here?" Manchin's probably like, "Look, you should have just listened to me." He's like, "This is going to get worse before it gets better."
Right, and the other thing is by the time this comes back up, the Virginia governor election will have been decided. Right, so. If Youngkin wins, pulls that off, then I mean, that debate takes on a whole different flavor, right?
Yeah.
Democrats got to be seriously worried if, Terry McAuliffe loses that race. What does that portend for 2022? They're already bracing for some pretty bad beats. So and that would make it a lot worse. That would really focus the mind on what is necessary to do now and what might not be prudent to vote on just yet.
Yeah. So, what about this thing that I saw yesterday with Nancy Pelosi? I mean, she's addressing the press and she gets this question and she's saying that, basically telling the press that they could have done they could do a better job of promoting, pushing this
selling
plan.
it. Yeah. Why don't you sell this package? Like, well,
shame on you for not pushing our plan.
Yeah, you're not doing it effectively enough. Not that you're not doing it enough,
yeah.
but your lines of attack are not really working. You guys got to hone this a little bit better. It is the expectation that it is the press's job to sell the president's program. It's an expectation, right? It's like a thing we expected you to do, you're not measuring up, right? I mean, that's her claim, and no one pushed back on it. No one said, Madam Speaker, we're not here to further your legislative agenda, right? No one said that. So it means they tacitly agreed that, yeah, they are supposed to be selling their agenda, which is its own problem. So, that was one of those, what did Michael Kinsley call it? A gaffe, where you accidentally tell the truth.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's amazing to me that, I mean, this is something that does it surprise me that, that the Democrats think that the media should be right there with them and pushing this plan and making sure that it gets passed. No, I wouldn't be surprised at all. I mean, we've known this for a long period of time, but for her to go out there and actually kind of scold them a little bit, say, hey, look, you could have done a better job selling this plan. I'm like, why did you say this?
I mean, she's comfortable in her skin, right?
Yeah.
She knows that she's among people who accept some responsibility for that.
Yeah, she seems to have kind of hinted to the progressive wing that you may have to pare back your expectations on the spending plan. Is that true? I mean, is she really thinking that that they're going to go ahead? I mean, after all this big push about we've got to have this $3.5 trillion here, we've got to have this all this spending here, that she's going to be willing to potentially accept something a little bit less to get something passed.
Well, here's the thing about it. So they're asking for 3.6 trillion, right? I guess Manchin has said his number is 1.8 or 1.9 trillion. So you're basically talking about cutting it in half to get to his stated number. Okay. So you're going to cut out half the goodies, right? And actually it's, a lot of that's must pass stuff. So it's not really half the goodies. It's almost all the goodies, and you keep the necessary things. So, because it's a budget resolution, right? The whole budget's underneath this. Isn't that right? And then that how they get it through reconciliation, where they don't need 60 to call it off the calendar. So that takes a lot of your goodies away. And if you pull that off, that's just not that guarantees you, well, it doesn't really guarantee you, but it gets you closer to getting Manchin's vote. But it doesn't address Sinema's concerns at all, right? Sinema hasn't given them, get below this number and then I'll vote for it. So her thing is, I'm not going to vote for it. So you're still at 49, even if you cut your package in half. So, I don't know what they do, because she won't even give them a number, and supposedly she's ghosting Biden. She won't take his calls. Right? Could you imagine, yeah, president's on the phone. Yeah, tell him I'm in the bathtub. I don't know, right? I mean, that's pretty crazy, turn of events. But that's where we are, and and to think, it's like when this started, right? And they're putting up all these bills, and we're sitting on here talking about, how do you stop this, right? And it's stopping itself. The people on their own side are doing it. They're finding out, like what we go through with, Mitt Romney and Susan Collins all the time.
It's just
Murkowski.
It's just amazing to me, that the Democrats have been so arrogant on this issue that they think that this is, this is, they're in control, by the numbers right now, and that they should be able to give everything away and just spend, spend, and that should be it. And they shouldn't be, the Democrats in the House shouldn't be giving an inch on this. And yet, the signs are all out there that, this is not going to fly at all, in its current form. And they keep pushing this. I mean, to me, this is also kind of, political suicide for a lot of the lesser Dems, the ones that they're going to write, the ones that are vulnerable. I mean, Nancy Pelosi, there's no danger of her losing, her seat in the House. But for a lot of others, I mean, this is a huge problem for them.
Right. When you are sitting on a 5-vote majority, right, a lot of that has to do with, your people have won on unfriendly territory. They've won in districts that's hard for their party to win, right? So if you're going to make those people walk the plank, vote for things that they can't, explain to their constituents, you're going to fall below the majority, right? Those are the people who are hurt. So, when you look at who's against this, who else calls Biden all the time is Allison Spanberger from Virginia, right? Supposedly moderate, to the extent any of them can be called moderate these days. Democrat congresswoman, right, who won in a Republican district. She won the district that Eric Cantor had, Dave Bratt had after that. She's hanging on by a thread. She almost lost to a pretty unknown guy last time. And, she's now in position to where, you can't do this to me. You can't, so she's one of those ones, now what they've done is they've hidden behind in the House, the order in which things are voted. So it's like, we're not voting for this unless we get the other first. And the other people are like, well, we can't trust you. So, you got to vote for ours first and not yours. So they're kind of at a stalemate, on how to proceed. And we've talked about this before, but the speaker does not appear to have mastered the vote counting on this the way she has in years past. So, there's a lot going on there, and it doesn't really favor the Democrats.
Yeah, I mean, for Nancy Pelosi, as good a politician as she is, particularly with the vote counting, and I mean, that's her job. I mean, is to get these things through. But for her, I mean, it's just like she's got blinders on or something, that she's not seeing this whole picture. It's like the focus is, let's get this done. We got to get this done. But she could cause a huge problem for the rest of her, her caucus in essence, and that, their slim majority is going to turn into a huge problem in one of these, tsunamis kind of a thing, where the votes really go, Republicans wind up with a 20-30, seat majority the next time around, just a huge flip, and that's going to be her fault. I mean, she's going to be squarely to blame for leading the Democrats down this path.
Right. And they appear to, so far at least, to have the Biden administration appears to have reverse coattails, right? If they show up, you lose. So
once again, just 9 months, less than 9 months into administration. Yeah. And it's a disaster in that, for the political sense there too.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. I mean, there are very few politicians, people running for office right now on a national level, that can afford to bring in a Joe Biden. You've got to be in an extremely safe seat to be able to do that. Anything that's competitive, you cannot bring him in at this point in time.
Right.
It's a disaster.
Which, why would you bring him into a safe seat, right?
Right. Why would there's really no
bug him, right?
There's really no need for that at all. Go ahead.
I was going to say, the other thing that's not helping them, which I think is pretty close to next on our list, is the oil price of oil. Is hit 80. It's about 83 for Brent, and it's about 81, almost 81 for West Texas this morning. Dollars per barrel, which is the highest it's been in 7 years. Gas prices are expected to go up another 30-40 cents per gallon in the next few weeks. That won't do McAuliffe any good, because it's top policies tied directly to Democrats, and if you don't believe that, then you have to explain why gas was half this price when they took office, right? Because I mean, there are some intervening events, but that's the main one. And, and so what they did was when they took office, they said, okay, we're not going to drill on federal lands. We had all these leases settled in Alaska. We're not going to do. So it took us back below energy independence, right? So the whole world looked at us and it's like, okay, whatever we do to the energy markets, it's not going to affect the United States because the United States can produce all its own energy. And now we're back to we're playing in the market. So we're vulnerable to these market swings. And people are saying, hey, it's a chance to mess with the United States by messing with the prices of energy. So, it's a lot worse problem for Europe, right? But the people who try to sabotage world economies through energy prices, right? They are empowered by the fact that we're no longer energy independent, and we're no longer energy independent. There's a direct causational pattern between that and actions taken by the Biden administration. So there's no way they're going to be able to escape blame for it. And there's no way they're going to be able to do anything about it in the near term. So because their people won't go for the policies that really would bring down energy prices. So that's the other thing. Is like when we talk about 2024, and there are people like, well, we should move on from Trump, this and that. You better have somebody who is similarly situated on energy policy, or you'll be having the same problems they will. You'll inherit their problems. You won't be able to solve them.
Yeah, no, I mean this whole thing just struck me, and just where energy prices are definitely going in the wrong direction for the average American. We don't like to see that. I mean, we know what the prices are here. I mean, as I had posted on Facebook, and when I was driving by and I looked at the 4 closest gas stations near to my house, and the average the other day was $3.32. I don't know what it is in your neck of the woods. My trip between Maryland to Evansville, Indiana. My wife and I were talking about how we finally got this trip down to kind of almost a science. We drive from here to Frederick and go to Costco and make sure we fill our tank. And then we use that to make it to predict where our next stop will be. We basically have an area or station or whatever picked out. My car gets pretty decent highway mileage, so we actually chose a different went a little bit further and chose a different station, and we tried to map it so that we hit that one, we hit another one, another Costco station in Lexington, Kentucky, and then finished off in Evansville, made our way into Evansville. And but we basically used all those same stations on the way back home. We were able to piece that together. Price, it was, I know that it would have been a little cheaper if I had been able to go a month ago to Evansville, right? Definitely cheaper there. But I noticed on the way back, like at the Costco in Lexington on Thursday, I paid like $2.81. On Monday, I paid $2.96. Yeah, okay, that's a pretty significant rise in just a few days. Not all the stations did that. When we got to this one Marathon station in Virginia, I guess it was in Fairmount, West Virginia. So we had used that on the way in. They had no 87 gas at all in that station. We had been there on Thursday. By Monday, they ran out of 87. So we put a little bit of gas in there, did the mid grade and moved on. But it was just like, okay, what there's just all kinds of problems here going on here. It's either you can't get the gas to the stations like they did in Fairmont, or the prices are going up, and that in conjunction with inflation. I mean, there was a hint out of, I think, one of the Fed's banks that they're saying maybe the inflation isn't transitory after all. This has kind of got the stock market a little, they're a little bit rattled right now.
Yellen's saying well into next year, right? Like,
yeah, I mean, they're
close to a year left of this.
Yeah, so that's not as transitory as they had led us to believe it was going to be. And
it's all by their own hand. It's all stuff that it didn't have to happen. If Trump would have won, we wouldn't be having it.
Yeah, there is one constant in all of this, though, I will say, is that the Costco hot dog and soda is still $1.50, like it has been for like ever. I don't know how much money Costco is losing on that deal for selling those, but but all the store traffic more than offsets it. I think it's
they could make more money on it, but I promise you, if someone's selling you a hot dog for $1.50, they're making money.
Soda.
And a soda.
Yeah.
They're still making money.
And so yeah, well, I mean, they make money off the other stuff. I mean, Costco, I mean, there's been pandemic winners. Amazon was one, Costco been one, which was interesting because, I follow the stock market, and when all this stuff happened, and the stock market reacted negatively to Costco. They thought, oh, well, with like Amazon was going to do more online. They've got the Whole Foods. They thought this was going to cut into Costco. And my feeling was just like, if you go through a Costco, yeah, they sell a lot of grocery goods, but they sell a lot of other things too. They other soft goods, with clothing. They have some hard goods in their appliances and television section, things like this. They move a lot of product. And here we are, 20 months later or whatever. Costco is just roaring ahead. They're doing very, very well. And complete, blindsiding of these Wall Street analysts, these experts who thought that they were not going to do well, but no, people have. I mean, there's very few Costco's I ever walk into that are not, on a Saturday particularly, that are not just packed with people. And now that they brought back the samples, you get even more people.
Yeah, that's right.
So you got all this, but Biden, I mean, this administration, they just don't know, what to do. I mean, people who want bacon, I mean, bacon has soared. All meats, meat prices have soared. If you go to
availability, I mean, it's that's where meat prices are up when you can find the meat. There's a lot of you can't find it.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's not as bad as it was during the pandemic in the sense of where you'd go, and you had lots of empty freezers. But there is still inconsistency. There are still things that are not getting down all the way into the supply chain where, you can go to a store. If you're the Costco's of the world, or the Sam's Club, or the Walmarts, you've got your supply chain pretty well worked out. But as you start getting into more rural parts of America, as you start where they can't get to those bigger stores, the products are spotty. A lot of the basics they're very spotty in terms of what they can get and what they can't get. So it's a rough go. And even as you kind of talk about, there are these other factors that go into play, but people are going to point to the people in power to blame when these things are going wrong. Whether or not they're fully to blame, it really won't matter. I mean, the thing right now is that Biden is going to take a hit on the gas and on overall inflation of all these goods going up.
All those ships out there that can't get unloaded, and I read the other day, if what you wanted to buy for Christmas, if it's not already on the ocean, it won't be here for Christmas.
Well, this is the other thing. I mean, I was reading an article yesterday about Halloween, where stores had already run out well in advance of Halloween decorations, because they weren't able to get them. I mean, one guy in Utah, I didn't even know the store existed, but anyway, they have some, and they supply apparently products to other places, but they haven't been able to get everything that they wanted for Halloween. People were looking for Halloween decorations, and they couldn't find anything.
Right. And you can't, whatever you think of Trump, this wasn't going on during the Trump administration, right? There was no supply chain problems. And if there were, they would have been, there's a feeling that there would have been worked out. Something would have been thrown up there as a solution.
Yeah. And we're all going to pay higher prices as to get product. I mean, a lot of these companies have decided, they're going to air freight them in, which is a heck of a lot more expensive than on a ship, on a container. And that will be reflected in prices. Restaurants, I mean, any place that you or I go, I mean, we're seeing that uptick in inflation. There's only so much a restaurant can do to tamp down their costs. They've got wage pressure, that all that fight for 15. I mean, $15 tends to be the absolute floor with a lot of places. They have to offer more money in a lot of places to get, even an inkling of interest for people to show up, to come to work for things. So that is, this is something that, we're in a world of hurt on this. the Biden administration has got us in a fix here, and they don't really have a solution how to get this back to where it was, or get back to where we can actually have, 2%, 2 or even 3% inflation for a lot of people right now would be good rather than 5 or 6.
Yeah. So and so I guess you saw they had they had an awful economic report the other day. It's just like the spin that they put out. Ron Klain had his little press release and he tweeted out of it all day, pointing out, if you look at this figure this way, it's not so bad, and so forth. And, the press, to its credit, it's like, that's nonsense, man. Things are going bad and we all know it. So,
all right.
You can't elect these Democrats and expect different. It happens every time. They never fail to put us in this mess. And it's the same mess. It doesn't change.
So I want to ask you about this IRS proposal. I guess they want to, they think there's a lot of money being, avoided in taxes and things like that. So they want the banks to report aggregate transactions above like $600 in all of our bank accounts and stuff like that. Janet Yellen has now endorsed this. I guess the information is supposed to be anonymized of some sort, but we are talking about the government, and I mean, banks are screaming they don't want to do this. It's a lot of burden for them. I don't know that on $600 and above transaction. I don't know. There's a lot of avoidance of things going on there. How much the IRS would learn from all of this, but I don't know. I don't like the idea that more of our privacy seems to be intruded, of just having our transactions, even if it's not tied to us directly, as they say it won't, being out there.
Well, you're going to drive people out of the banking system, which maybe that's part of the objective. And you're going to, there's already I don't know if you use PayPal and those kind of guys, right? Okay. So I do these basketball tournaments, and so the share could be $32. Okay. We all pay $32. We can go to this tournament. Okay. So people are sending me random $32 is for weeks, right? Because they don't all pay on time.
Right.
So, the PayPal will flag it, right? Hey, that's kind of weird. Like, you keep getting these $32, And so, and that's all it is basketball. So, the idea they're going to be flagging all kind of stuff because, people have these little arrangements. They're paying their, their pet dog walkers and all that kind of stuff. So all those kind of things are going to be caught up in this. And the people have to explain this and that and the other. And that's not who's cheating you on tax revenue, right? The people who are having $600 transactions are not our problem on tax cheating, right? It's people with big bucks, that it matters hugely to them. It matters tens of millions of dollars to some of them. So, and if you want tax revenue, it's like, the Democrats complain about all these, companies that don't pay taxes. Right? They didn't pay any taxes. So many out of the top, 500 or 400 didn't pay taxes. Okay, why didn't they pay taxes? Did they just scofflaw it? No, they did not. They took advantage of, like GE that year didn't pay any taxes because they greened all their buildings, right? They got tax credits for their entire tax liability, by greening all these buildings. Okay. Well, who wanted the buildings green? Who passed the legislation to say, hey, we'll give you a tax credit if you'll green your building, right? It wasn't Republicans. Republicans don't care if your building is greened, right? That's a Democrat thing. So you're the cause of the thing you're railing against. You're the one who did it. So, and I think people are getting fed up with that. And this is times of the excesses of the fat cats are hurting the regular people. So, I don't know. I think that by the time that actually happens, it won't be 600. It'll be 2,000, something like that.
Yeah, they need to raise the bar if they're trying to do that and stuff like that. I mean, my wife and I have spent, I don't know, probably easily a couple $1,000s on buying stuff, doing stuff for our church missionaries and stuff like that. If somebody was to give me $600 to help pay for those goods, that would be great, but I don't have people out there just offering me money. But if that was, it shows up, it's like, I'm not trying to evade any taxes from this. I'm just getting basically people chipping in to help me pay for, for these aprons, or for the paint, or for a blender, or something like that,
The same as collecting for uniforms and tournament fees, right?
Right, exactly. So yeah, it's just without this is information without any context is part of the problem. So on that. I want to ask you this before we close off, which is just because you've talked a lot in the past about climate change and things like this, and all the stuff that's been going on. So Google and YouTube, they've announced that they're going to demonetize, pages, videos and things like that of anybody who puts out anything, on that are denying climate change. I mean, they're basically saying the IPCC is, they are the governing body. I mean, their science is real. It's all good. And if you go against them, you're not going to be able to earn any money on YouTube, no matter, even if they've got a salient argument, even if they've got, expertise in this field. This is, what's going on here? What do you think?
Well, what they've said is, if you make a claim as fact, they will police that up. The claim they don't agree with as fact. But if you discuss issues, or you say, here's a proposal, or here's a paper by such and such a guy, we can all talk about that. That they will let that go. Now, how that will work on a day-to-day basis remains to be seen. Of course, devil is definitely in the details there. The other thing is, if you're going to do stuff like this, you're an editor. You've decided some content is worthwhile for your format and some is not. And okay, that's fine, but you're not protected by Section 230 at that point. You can be sued for libel. You can be sued for, and I think what's coming up is like, Alex Berenson, who's done some of the best journalism out there on COVID and how it really works, has been banned from Twitter. And his plan is to sue them for defamation, for hurting his reputation, former New York Times reporter, hurting his reputation as a journalist by, casting these aspersions on his work. And I'm not sure that it won't work. So it's going to be interesting to see.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you've made that point before. In general, I think that's a good thing, in the sense that, these companies, I mean, Facebook, Google, all these guys have fought tooth and nail Twitter about, look, we're protected by 230 because we allow this free and open expression. But they have been making move after move after move to say this content is banned, and this person is banned because they're saying this and stuff like that. So they are now using editorial discretion on individuals, on content. And how do you argue that that you're now protected when you have now taken forcible action on these things? So I think there's a wide open lane here for them. If they've got good attorneys on this, even as big as Facebook and Google and Twitter are, I think there's some vulnerability here that could be very, very interesting, going down the line. Yep. All right, 2 minutes.
My fellow conservatives, do not waste 1 second of your time defending John Gruden. He got what he deserved. You talk like that, it didn't get found out till these emails came out. But, that's the way you think. And this is a private business. This is not government silencing him, right? He's free to have his views. But if your job is to lead people in something, enterprise like football, where you have to get the people who work for you to do more than their paycheck requires them to do, right? They have to go all out, give you full effort, all this stuff, okay, to overcome the biggest, strongest people on the planet doing this, okay? Then, you're not in position to say, you can't get up in there, you can't have the guy get up who's supposed to lead them, on record saying that he's looking at the size of their lips, right? And comparing it to tire companies. So that, am I a Firestone or a Goodyear or a full-on Michelin, right? I mean, you've reduced these people to their lips. And so you can't coach them. You can't be their boss, right? And I don't blame the Raiders. And, What I want to know is like, what did Bruce Allen say back? You know, this involved the Redskins, right? This was emails between Gruden and top Redskins executive. And so did Bruce Allen say, oh, that's reprehensible, John, don't talk like that? If so, let's see that email, right? And if Bruce said, yeah, you're right, then let's see that email, you know? So, you know, I guess we're not investigating Bruce Allen, and no one has none of the politically connected people are trying to get rid of him. But so we probably won't. But, you know, I'd like to know what he says. And I don't think, you know, we should not be defending that kind of behavior. That was outrageous, and he got what he had coming.
Yeah. Does John Gruden have any career left in football of any kind at this point?
You know, I don't know how you do it, right? I mean, there used to be these leagues, and some of Louisiana had one where it was the whole league was all white schools, and you know, you could go to something like that, I guess. But you know, back before, you know, back in the way back days. But I don't know if any of that's still going on, and I don't know where else he could coach or comment on football. And I don't know, you know, and unlike like the guy, you know, who was at Baylor, who looked the other way on the sexual allegations, he's now coaching high school in Texas, and he's so slowly working his way back, right? But I don't know how you work your way back from that. I think you have to move on to other stuff.
Is that Art Briles?
Art Briles. Thank you.
Yeah.
I did not recall it.
Yeah. So yeah. I mean, Gruden. I mean, the thing is that there's so much focus on this. These comments were so terrible that, I mean, and people are going to be following. They're going to be following wherever Gruden goes. And you know, we have social media out there. We got all this stuff. It's going to be kind of hard to hide if you try and take a job in sports anywhere. There's going to be a lot of focus on that. And I don't know too many places, you know, that want that level of attention. You know, they'd have to defend a decision to hire Gruden. That's right. Pretty tough. That's really hard to defend.
Yeah. I mean, that's a career ender, and you know, like, don't say that kind of stuff. You gotta stay out of that one. Don't say that. You know, people are like, well, you know, it's 10 years ago. They're searching through his emails. It's like, you can search through my emails 10 years ago. You won't find that, right?
Yeah.
I don't think you find it in yours either.
Yeah, and you know, and to defend yourself, saying like, well, I'm really not that kind of person. It's like, well, if you're not that kind of person, why'd you say those things?
That's right.
You know,
right. You know, the people who aren't that kind of person, the way they prove it is they never say that.
Right. All right. Well, that's the end capstone for this one here, this show. Thank you everyone for joining us. Please, as always, stay safe and stay well. Remember, we live in the greatest country in the world. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise. God bless America, and we will see you again